In a distant corner of the wide human frontier, a quiet trading moon drifted around a blue gas giant, and the people there believed that nothing important ever happened to them. Yet on one warm cycle, a lone human courier named Eli walked into the old stone port carrying a sword that hummed with a light that was not of any known alloy. Eli had found the blade in the wreck of a small scout craft that had crashed in the hills far beyond the port, where ancient ruins mixed with strange new debris from a forgotten war, and when he had touched the hilt, the sword had flared with a pale fire that ran along the edge like a living thing. And he had felt a pulse that seemed to speak without words. The scout craft had belonged to a warrior woman from a distant star empire named Terra, who had been sent to this remote moon to retrieve a relic stolen long ago, and when her ship failed, she had walked on foot toward the port with her small honor guard, never knowing that a simple courier now carried the most sacred symbol of her people. Lee did not know any of this when he walked through the archway of the port, but he did know that the sword was not meant for him, and that some owner would come seeking it, so he did the one thing a human was known for in the far reaches of space, which was to try to do the right thing, even when it made no sense to anyone else. Terra Dawn and her warriors reached the port at dawn, their armor dark and smooth, their eyes sharp with the focus of those who had been raised for battle since childhood, and when they saw the glow of the sword inside the market hall, they froze, because that glow was the mark of the first forge, place spoken of in songs and guarded by oaths older than their empire. Warriors formed a tight circle around Terra as she stepped forward, her hand on the hilt of her own blade, which was now missing, because the sword in Eli's hands was, in fact, her own, though changed by a hidden power. Awakened by his touch, Eli saw the Tilly armed group and raised both hands to show he meant no harm, yet he kept the sword held out in front of him because he believed it was the right thing to return what did not belong to him. Terra stopped a few steps away and spoke in a calm tone that held a quiet strength, and she said that the sword was hers and that it carried the honor of her bloodline, that he should place it on the ground and step away. Yuli nodded and moved to do exactly that. Yet when he lowered the sword, the blade flared brighter, and a wave of heat rolled over his palm, as if the weapon itself resisted leaving his hand, and he felt a sharp burn that made him gasp. Though he did not drop it, the warriors cried out in alarm, because no one but Kara had ever been able to hold that blade and live, and the sight of a human gripping it while it blazed like a star was something none of them had ever imagined. I gritted his teeth and kept moving, because pain was not enough to stop him from doing what he thought was right. And when he finally held the sword out toward Terra, the fire along the blade grew even stronger and cast long shadows across the market. Terra stared at Eli with wide eyes, and for the first time in her life she felt fear not of an enemy, but of a truth she had been taught was impossible, because her people believed that the sword would only answer to one soul, and now it was answering to a stranger. The heat burned Eli's hand until the skin was raw, yet he did not release the blade, and he said in a strained voice that it was hers, and that he had only wanted to return it, and those simple words carried a power greater than any weapon, because they were spoken without pride or demand. The sword pulsed once more, and then its fire leaped outward in a ring of light that forced Terra warriors to stagger back and in. That moment they dropped their weapons and fled in terror, because they felt the presence of something far older and greater than any empire. Terra stood alone before Eli as her guards ran, and she felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her, because her people had always feared that the sword would one day choose a bearer outside their bloodline, and that this would mark the end of their rule. Eli finally released the blade, and it fell into Terra's hands, as if guided by an unseen force, and the fire along its edge faded, leaving only a faint glow that pulsed like a living heart. Terra looked at Eli and saw not an enemy, but a human who had endured pain to do what was right, and in that moment she understood something her people had long forgotten, which was that honor was not bound by blood or birth, but by choice. The port slowly returned to life as merchants and travelers crept out from hiding. Yet everyone could feel that something had changed, because the air itself seemed charged with new possibility. Terra ordered her warriors to return, and when they did, they came with bowed heads, because they now saw Eli not as a weak outsider, but As someone who had faced their sacred blade and lived, Eli wrapped his burned hand in a simple cloth and gave a small smile, because he had done what he set out to do, and he did not care about legends or fear, only that the sword was back where it belonged. Kara thanked him in a voice that held deep respect, and she told him that the blade had awakened because it sensed his spirit, and that this meant he was now bound to her people by. Fatili did not understand all her words, but he understood the meaning, and he said that he did not seek glory or power, only a quiet life and the chance to help when he could. This simple answer shook Kara more than any battle, because her world was built on conquest and pride, and here was a human who cared nothing for such things, yet had shown more courage than most of her finest warriors. News of the event spread quickly across the stars, and soon many worlds whispered of a human who had held a sacred blade and forced an entire warband to flee in. Fearsome called Eli a hero, while others called him a sign of doom, yet he remained in the small port working as a courier and living as he always had, because he believed that great deeds did not require great titles. Kara returned to her empire and told the elders what had happened, and many refused to believe her until the sword itself glowed in her hands and showed them the memory of Eli standing firm despite the burning pain. The elders realized that their old ways had led them to fear change, and that this fear had made them weak, and so they decided to seek an alliance with humanity. Rather than war, Kara returned to the port. She brought gifts and a message of peace, and she found Eli delivering packages with his bandaged hand still healing. She told him that because of his act, her people would no longer see humans as lesser beings, but as equals and partners in a new future. He listened quietly and nodded, because he had never set out to change the fate of empires. Yet he was glad if his simple choice had made the galaxy a little kinder. From that day on, the story of the sword became a symbol of human resilience and moral strength, and many species came to respect humans, not for their weapons, but for their will. Kara and Eli remained friends, and though they came from different worlds, they shared a bond forged in a moment of pain and trust. The burned mark on Eli's hand faded into a faint scar, yet he kept it uncovered as a reminder that doing the right thing often carried a cost, and that this cost was always worth paying. In the years that followed, humans and Terra people built trade routes and cultural ties that made the frontier safer for all, and the old fears slowly gave way to understanding. Sword remained with Terra, yet its glow would sometimes brighten when Eli was near, as if acknowledging the spirit that had awakened it. Some said this meant that the blade would one day choose a human as its bearer, but Eli never sought such a future, and he was content to remain a simple courier. Still the legend grew, and children across many worlds learned of the day a human tried to return a sword, and in doing so showed the galaxy what true honor looked like. And so the tale of he tried to return her sword at Scorched his hand, her warriors dropped weapons and fled in terror, became not just a story of fear, but a story of hope, because it proved that even in a vast and often cruel universe, a single act of kindness could change everything.